Welcome back to the show. Today's guest, we have the man, the myth, Sam Taggart. Sam is the founder of Door-to-Door Experts, the largest direct sales training platform in the country, founder of Door-to-Door Con. He's trained over 60,000 sales reps, 1,300 companies, an author, a speaker, a podcaster. Thanks for being on, dude.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we made it work, dude.
Yeah.
So you just left the Hermosi conference. What'd you think, dude?
It was great. I mean, I'm a firm believer of like always invest in yourself, and you know, there's always like one nugget you can take. You're gonna get an ROI, and I think too many people fail to practice that principle of like go invest and see what you can gain out of it. And I already made some moves via text message while at the event that hopefully gives me an ROI.
So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because I agree. Where is the fine line though between too much information, between the application part? To your point, you already applied something you learned, where there's people that go to different conferences, different books, and yet their life doesn't change.
Yeah, it's kind of like, would you rather read one book 12 times or 12 books a year, right? So it's like a lot of people are like, oh, I read 52 books this year, a book a week. And I'm like, okay, but like, what have you applied? And it's like, I think find like a mentor or a personality, a guru, and say, I'm going to like micro study this person for 2 years. Like to me, that is way more valuable than like hopping around and trying to read everything and do all the things. And then in a book or an event, say, what are the 3 things that I'm going to do after this event? So like I have a whole post-event decompression process because I've done this, I coach this, and I've been to so many. So I'm like, okay, I have probably 15 pages of notes, and on my notes, I have 1 page filled out with action items. And then on the plane home, I go and say, what are the 3 priorities that I'm going to make, and how do I execute on those as fast as possible? Then I can always come back to all the 15 pages and figure stuff out. But like, if I only implemented 1 to 3 things, could I make this all worth it?
Mastery. Well, dude, a lot of people know you obviously from the door-to-door space. I grew up in door-to-door as well. I've been doing this 10 years. You've been doing it a little bit longer than me. Since you're 18, I believe you started at Vivint. Talk to me a little bit about your journey in door-to-door. You went from being a rookie salesman at 18, 19 years old to obviously transitioning to alarms, to solar, and now you run the biggest door-to-door conference in the country. You're training, coaching, consulting. Talk to me about your transition in your career a little bit in door-to-door.
Yeah, so it actually started when I was 11. So all I did was knock since I was little. So I did magazines. Then in high school, I had a curb painting business. And that's just like how I made money. You know what I mean? Like, it's so funny. This dude comes up to me and he's like, how did you transition? Literally at this event. And he's like, hey, I know who you are. How did you transition from W-2 to like running your own thing? And I'm like, I never had a W-2. He's like, really? And I was like, nope, always 1099. But, you know, it's just kind of like literally did the thing that the manager tells you to do when they recruit you. It's like, hey, you're going to be a rep. And I was a rep for 2 years. Then it was like, all right, you're going to manage. And I was like, all right, I'm going to manage. And I sucked for 2 years and I co-managed. And I was like, what's the learning curve here? And then I managed by myself for a couple years. And then it's like, all right, you're going to become a regional, have multiple teams. And I did that. And then it was like, wait, where's the roadmap for this? And I kind of was like done drinking that Kool-Aid. And I'm a creator at heart. I love music. I love art. I love building shit, Legos. You know what I mean? Just like whatever the thing as a kid. And so I got to this point at Vivint where I was like, oh, I'm on like a stinking hamster wheel. I can go build more guys, build more teams, make the same money, doing more work. I was like, what's the goal, right? And I kind of got frustrated. So I was like, F it. I'm going to go to a company that has no sales org, build the sales org. And I started from like a blank canvas. And that's when I became at Solstice or in solar. I went into solar kind of as a VP role, but of a nothing company type thing, and said, can I try a different skill set, which is a very different skill set. And you obviously did that at Sunder, and it was like, all right, we're figuring out pay scales, and you have to build the competitions, and you have to build the training. Where at Vivint, it was like, all that's already done. They had whole departments to do that. So I did that for 2 years, and then I got to a point where I was like, I felt this calling where it was like, I need to go help this space in a more unique way, which was to unify, up level, bring honor and integrity to it. Because I just felt like our industry is such a beautiful industry, but still, even people in the industry shit talk on the industry.
Yeah.
Or there's people that don't feel pride in it, and they feel like it's slimy, or they feel like it's not a real job. And I was like, why is that? And so I just said, what if I could go and like evangelize? DDD's awesome. And like, I don't have any shame going into this Hermosi event, and all these business owners like, what do you do? I'm like, I do door to door. I was at a billionaire dinner with all these hedge funds, the founder of Fortnite, and like all these like really, really rich dudes. And they're like, what do you do? I'm like, I knock doors.
Yeah.
They're like, no,
Door-to-door guy.
yeah. They're like, oh, you're being humble. Like, really, what do you do? Because they had like, have a guest list on this. Like, they send a guest list to the dinner. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, who is this? I knock doors. And I like, for me, I want people to feel that pride. And then we built really a worldwide coaching company that helps scale businesses and their sales, their leadership, recruiting. And that's been a fun 8-year journey now, which is pretty crazy.
No, it's awesome to see, dude. So I started in network marketing. That's where I cut my teeth in entrepreneurship when I was 18, 19. Unlike you, I had 2 W-2 jobs and I hated them. And I've been psychologically unemployable for about 13 years now, which I'm very grateful for.
Yes.
But I remember in network marketing, there's this guy that changed my life. His name was Eric Worre, which I'm sure you know, and I think he may have been on your show or you guys have connected. But he, to me, was kind of like your role in the network marketing space. He was bringing education and bringing professionalism and really being the guy to help people in the space really level up. I know that wasn't your initial goal, and it kind of evolved as you saw the need for that. But what do you think it took for you to go away from what you were used to and what you were good at and really lean into your creative side and create a completely different paradigm in the door-to-door space from a coaching standpoint?
It was hard. And it's funny, a guy asked me that today. He's like, how do you make that shift? And, you know, I kind of got to a point where it's like, if you chase fulfillment and like impact, the dollars will follow. And it's like a simple principle. If you're in sales listening to this, so it's like, you know, dollars follow value. And so I was like, maybe I could go do and build a lifestyle that I enjoy and have ultimate impact. And hopefully I'll get paid one day to do so. And it took 1.5 years. Like, people don't realize like the grind. And I was like working just as hard. I was on an airplane 3 times a week, like making no money because all the money I put back into the business, because it's like, it costs $1 million to throw door-to-door con. People don't realize that. Like, you know, and then you have to pay employees and then you have to, you know what I mean? And
before any
like,
ticket sales.
Before you, yeah. And it's like, I just sold and got paid for me, yet I'm paying you. You know what I mean? And, but I just thought like, there's a bigger mission for me. And you know how many times people call me and are like, hey, I got a big offer for you. Come sell for us. And I had to be like, that's not what I'm doing right now. You know what I mean? And it's just like saying consistent in like one direction and saying, what's the one thing that I know I can do, and not getting distracted. I think it's so easy to fall back, where a lot of people transition out and chase a dream, or they transition into sales and then they part-time it, kind of do it, and then they bounce around all the time. And I'm like, dude, what if you just like put energy into one thing for like 5 years? Then what happens? But it's like every 6 months, people are like on this new thing. And I'm like, no wonder you never go anywhere. You never create a momentum.
What's the quote? It says, people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 5 years.
Yeah, 100%.
Like that compound effect. I want to kind of rewind to something that you said. You were focused on value, and then value brought kind of the result. You've coached tens of thousands of sales guys. You've been around different companies. You've seen solar and roofing and all the different kind of industries. And now you're in a whole nother space where you're networking and conversing with way different verticals and high level people. What do you think is the difference between the people that come in and they get excited, they get jazzed up, maybe they're talented, maybe they have everything that they need in order to be successful in the door-to-door space or really in business or capitalism, but they end up a year, 2 years, 3 years later still spinning their wheels and never actually accomplishing anything?
In this workshop today, they said something that I was like, that's the right way to say it. And they were selling us this $35,000 package and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, they're teaching us how to sell that. And I've been selling packages for coaching for a long time. So it was actually really interesting because he goes, how do you overcome the objection when somebody says, what's going to be my ROI? And do you guarantee an ROI? So let's say I sell you information or training and you're like, well, how do I know I'm going to get an ROI on this? And there's like, there is no guarantee. You're betting on yourself. Like, and he goes, and this is what he said. He said, the people that are begging for a guarantee and say, I have to have a guaranteed by X date in order for me to make this investment on an ROI, usually are the worst customers and are usually the ones that are always going to fail. Why? Because they're looking for somebody else to save them and do it for them instead of them just realizing that if it's going to happen, it's up to them. And the highest value customer is going to be the one that's saying, I know that if I just take the lessons learned and applied them and actually like carried the boats and did the things they tell me to do, it's going to work. And so the difference of the people that I see going and crushing it, making it happen, is the carnivore that says, I am going to win by taking the frameworks, tools, the predecessors, the mentors' advice, and say, do the thing, instead of looking for them to come save me to do the thing. And too many people are trying to avoid the very basic thing, which is called go knock the door or go recruit the team and do the basic thing, pound stone, chop wood, carry water, whatever the thing is. And they're trying to avoid that, and they're waiting for somebody else to come chop the wood and carry the water for them. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. Spot on. Sam, what do you think makes a direct sales space so special? Obviously, we both have affinities to it because we grew up in it. But to your point earlier, from the outside looking in, most people look at it similar to a lot of unorthodox spaces, maybe network marketing, direct sales, door to door, and they look at it as maybe means to an end. But as we know, it could be a vehicle to literally transform your life. You know, it could take you from where you are to where you want to be, give you the skills, the network, the income, the resources to go do whatever you want with your life. Dream bigger. Why do you think it's so special?
Freedom is the first word that comes to my mind. And if you like, take the core of what everybody wants in life is they want community, they want to feel loved, but really like we want freedom. It's like what America was built off of. It's like we wanted to escape Europe because we didn't have the freedom to think, right? But the problem is we fell right back into the unfree thinking. And it's like, hey, go work for the company, go do whatever they tell you and make what they tell you. And then there's like, here's the industry average of what this person should make because their position says X. And it's like, hold on. If we followed industry standard averages, and you know those employees that come to you and they're like, hey, the average customer service manager makes $100,000, and they just Googled that shit. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay. Like, where are you effing getting this information? I was like, well, the average American is obese, in debt, and has nothing. You know what I mean? I'm like, let's just take averages and say, is that what you're going for? And I think the cool part about door-to-door direct sales is it flips everything on its head and says, eat what you kill, and there is no limit, and you can go create your own entrepreneur business or your entrepreneur business, and it is very, like, put it on your back, and there is no limit. And I've seen young 19-year-old kids go make $1 million in a year, and I've seen 50-year-old dudes that just were like a teacher their whole lives and all of a sudden fell into door-to-door and go make $1 million in a year. And they're like, where was this my whole life, right? And then I see for every 10 people you hire, 9 of them quit because they're just like, oh, this is hard and this is scary. And I'm like, was that just a conditioning problem since you were a little kid? Is that a belief problem that you just never bet on yourself? Is that a skill problem because you never had to do shit? Is that a resilient problem because you never had hard things in life? Like, what is the issue that we've conditioned Americans to not solve for? And I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I just think it is the skill set that if you say, I can make $5,000 a day whenever I want to, selling whatever product, and I mean that. When I 2 weeks ago, I went and sold tampon subscriptions.
Yeah.
Just to say, will it sell? And I've just tried anything and everything. And I'm like,
it's a good video too, good caption.
Pick any video, any product, any service, and you could go sell it. And it's like, freedom is knowing if I'm broke and I had shit hit the fan, could I go solve it like this? That's sales. Number 2 is then can I discipline enough to then create wealth with that money that I make?
Talk to me a little bit about the wealth creation. What's the right frame that people should have in this industry? You know, you hear all the time, you need to think about it as a career. You need to think about it as a business. You need to think about it as a job. You need to think of it as a vehicle. What's the frame that you had, the perspective as you went through your different cycles in this industry that allowed you to actually exit the industry on top and not like most people that just do enough to get by?
Huge. Great question. So here was the problem is there's what your leaders tell you, but then there's what they condition you. And I think those two things are very different. When I got recruited to this, it was like Casey Boss sits me down and he says, what's your will you just commit to 5 years? Because I had done 2 years at Platinum, then I came to Vivint. And I had quit Platinum right before I went to Vivint. And it was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. Then the guy was like, nope, you're going to be a manager. I was like, did you not hear me? I quit. I don't want to do door-to-door. And then they wrote me in and like, we're going to want you to manage and here's your 5-year plan. And I was like, all right, I can see some upside in this. All right, I'll commit to 5 years. All right, just do 5 years. And you can make this much money. So I did. I went and made $80,000, then I made like $250, then I made like $500, and it just kept going up, right? And then after 5 years, I was like, all right, I'm out. And they're like, you can't leave. I was like, what do you mean? I did the 5 years. And they're like, yeah, but you're killing it and you're doing this. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? You're not making money there. And I was like, well, no, I saved up and I put my money into investments and I was smart with it. I have real estate and I have passive income and I did the thing. Where most of the counterparts that I worked with, the more their income grew, the more they bought cool, fancy toys. I was the #1 rep at Vivint and I drove a Kia. And everybody's like, why do you drive a Kia, Sam? I was like, I just can't justify buying a $70,000 car, $150,000 car like you guys, when I know I could take that same $70,000 and put it into a duplex. So I bought a duplex, another duplex, a fourplex, a 56plex, and I just kept upping and playing the game at 1031. So then I have lots of real estate because I'm like, that to me is wealth creation. Not let me show you how cool my ability to go to a dealership and buy a Lambo. And too many people in this industry are told, hey, go set yourself up for wealth. But then what they're conditioned to do is keep them broke. And the leaders are like, if I can keep them broke, then they have to keep working hard. And I'm like, wait a minute, I want to stay broke so then I have still the work ethic, but my broke is just cash broke and net worth wealthy. Does that make sense? So I shoved all my money away to illiquid assets where I was like, I can't access that capital very easy. So then I feel broke, but I was building wealth along the way. Does that make sense? So 100%. When I had to exit and start DD Experts and go 1.5 years without getting paid, it wasn't like I was effed and I couldn't pay my bills. I could sell a house if I needed to. I had passive income. I had money saved in assets. So I was fine. Does that make sense? But not many 26-year-olds could say that. And I had a multi-million-dollar portfolio. Does that make sense?
100%. So where do you think that came from? Like, I know you grew up intrinsically in that entrepreneur mindset because I believe things aren't taught, they're caught. A lot of times, whether maybe you had a rich uncle or you grew up in a household that valued financial literacy. I'm Jewish, so it's easy for me to save money. But for most people, especially in solar, like that's the mindset that is missing, you know, where, like you said, they make more money, their lifestyle goes up. They make more money, their lifestyle goes up. And one of the worst things I think as a leader that you can do in this industry is when your time with the people that you're working with is over, for them to leave and not have anything to show for it and have to go get another sales job. So why do you think you were thinking like that from an early age? Was it a book? Was it a mentor? Or was it just the association you were around?
A combination, but I think the main thing is when I was in high school. So I grew up in Park City, Utah. So association. I grew up on one of the richest streets in America. I then moved to California my sophomore year of high school to just a normal neighborhood. And my dad did land development. Well, it was right during the crash. So he lost everything. So we had to move back to Salt Lake in a 3-bedroom condo. He drove my grandma's Saturn, like a 2000 Saturn. Like, you know, he goes from driving the Jaguar to the Saturn, goes from the multi-mansion to the 3-bedroom townhome.
Big lifestyle shit.
You know what I mean? Just like, and I watched this. And so I'd been in the riches to rags, and that was right when I started. So he's living in a townhome driving a Saturn, and I go start selling alarms. So what's interesting is I was like, I made a commitment to myself because I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, what the frig? Like, why'd you? And he's like, I rolled dice. I went all in on certain shit. I got screwed multiple times because I got bad partners. And he's like, my biggest regret is I never kept my real estate. Does that make sense? Like, he'd buy and flip his houses. He'd sell off, he'd build, he'd develop, and then he'd sell. And I was like, damn, like, had he kept, you know, the homes he was buying, he had, in Park City, they were giving him lots on a seller finance for $20,000 in Pine Brook. You can't buy a house for less than $1 million or 1.5 in Park City today. Like, the cheapest house you can find is $1 million. He was getting lots for $20,000, building houses for 70. Imagine he would have just kept 3 of those. He built like 50 in Jeremy Ranch. You know what I mean?
Big
and it's
chilling.
like, he'd be set for life. But he's like, I used that, funded this, then risked it here and did this. And so I just said, oh my gosh, I have such an opportunity to make good money and I can stock it in real estate. Don't sell. Like, just don't cash out and chase some weird little rando thing. So I have never taken real estate without 1031ing it. Meaning I've never taken $1 of profits from real estate in the last 15 years. Meaning all of it just rides, recompounds, levels up. Recompounds, levels up. And then Warren Buffett, the greatest asset in the world, compounding interest.
Yep.
So I was like, those two things, and watching my dad be broke as a joke at 60 years old and have to start his life over, and me being like, okay, I never want to be 60 and living in a freaking 3-bedroom townhome. I want my assets to pay for all my liabilities. So I just kind of use that as my, like, I luckily had a great, weird, right before I went into sales, my 15, 16, 17-year-old Sam just saw my dad get crushed.
Love it, dude. I want to do a little bit of a pivot because I'm really interested of your perspective here. I've heard you say before you've had a spiritual awakening through your sales career. Talk to me about that.
That's I don't know how deep do we want to go, dude. That's a good one.
We want to go deep.
Well, I obviously grew up Mormon, Utah, dude. And I still, not saying I'm not Mormon, but I'm not saying I am. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, I still believe in Jesus. And sales is a hard thing because it's a lot of like self-convincing on a lot of things. And there's a lot of times where it's like, there's the tactical side of sales, there's the mental side of sales, and then there's the spiritual side of sales. And I went so hard on the achievement, all of like play to win at all costs, which cost me a relationship. And it cost me, you know, like a lot of things in life that I realized, I'm like, man, is it worth the cost over here of achievement? Is it sacrificing alignment? And so this concept of like balancing the pendulum between alignment and like where are you sacrificing happiness, fulfillment, relationships, the things that really matter in exchange for just achieving awards and winning competitions and XYZ. And granted, you need those things to drive you. And so it's just understanding this balance of stress versus intensity, right? So it's like, am I just stressed or am I just living life consciously with intensity? Which is totally different. Both of which you're putting energy and efforts towards, but one of them you're doing consciously, the other one you're doing unconsciously. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so then got divorced, and then it was like blank canvas. I'm just going to like whitewash all beliefs and challenge everything that I think and have been conditioned to believe. And went down my own, like, I guess, awakening, you could call this, and saying, is this borrowed or is this mine? And am I believing, is this a rule, meaning like a bullshit rule, or is this something that I actually believe? And I think the more and more you kind of unwind or unlearn, you know, patterns from childhood, parents, religion, schools, all the things, the more and more you can tap into true essence and just say, cool, I can attract the right things, I can connect to the right people, find the right customer, whatever the thing is. And I found you can make magic happen more effortlessly than through force.
It's that deep work.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that a little bit because I do think as well direct sales is basically a self-discovery program with a compensation plan attached.
Yes.
The more you grow, the more you learn, the more you earn. And I can totally relate to that myself. Getting into entrepreneurship, for me, it started first with network marketing and then evolved to door-to-door. I consider them very similar, but that's when I started learning about the spiritual laws of success. That's when I started learning about law of attraction. I started to condition my mind and start asking those deeper questions, those intrinsic questions that before I turned off. But what I noticed, and I'm curious about you, Sam, is earlier in my career, all the personal development, all the content I would absorb was more, right? That Western accomplishment.
Yep.
And then as I got a little bit older, really the last couple of years, and I've done okay, I've made some money, you know, accomplished a lot of my dreams, bought my parents a house, done a lot of the cool things that I wanted to when I was young. I got to the point where I was like, definitely not unfulfilled, but it made me question, was that conditioning that was beneficial at the time, is that still valid and beneficial to me in my life right now? So the question is, do you think it's seasonal, where sometimes you have to give up certain things? Maybe it's your solitude with yourself. Maybe it's the deep understanding. Maybe it's time with your family. Is that something you have to give up in order to be successful for a season? Or is there a way to kind of cultivate both of those?
Yeah, I think God built seasons for a reason. I think God built farming as the perfect example, same as hunting seasons, same as, you know, so it's like you think of like since the beginning of time, it's like you have your harvest season and then you have your sowing season and you have your tilling season and you have, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like if you just took like the natural essence of seasons, it's like during the harvest, a farmer, you're not going to see me. It's like all hands on deck. We're effing going and picking because it's like we can't just like work the same way that we did in the winter. Does that make sense? And so if you lived your life a little bit more in seasonality versus 2-week vacation and everything's 9 to 5, regimented out, like you might find more harmony. And so like I live my life very much like that. It's like I intentionally plan quarterly retreats with my spouse, or like next week I'm taking my family to Lake Powell. And it's like, how do I get away and have seasons of decompress and then seasons of intensity? Like last week I was in 6 states or 2 weeks ago I was in 6 states in 7 days. You know what I mean? And it's like, you're not going to see me, but then it's like, I got to go hard here where I can then make up the difference. And it's like, that's okay. Because I feel like some people that try to live a life where it's like kind of doing a lot of little things, but not like nothing, that's because they're trying to stay comfortable. And I'm like, if you want to get outside the comfort zone, you can't like not go hard into something.
No, it's
but
I
think over the, like, the other answer to your question, it's like the older you get, priorities change. Does that make sense? So it's like you think of the elder, the wisdom, they're like, oh yeah, I remember when that was important to me too. You know what I mean? And it's like you're checking boxes. That's really important. As the older you get, you're like, yep, I've checked all these boxes. Not that important to me anymore. Priorities change. Family or giving or mentorship or, does that make sense? So like I got to a point early where I was like, I actually love seeing other people win just as much as like it matters for me to just be checking every box. Like I celebrate sometimes other people's victories. I'm like, dude, look at that guy. I just went from 2 to 20 million. Like, yeah, like that's fun for me. You know what I mean? Where, I don't know. So like, and now I'm in a different season. I think like what also is interesting is every 7 years, your cells all rejuvenate. So you're like actually a physically different person every 7 years. And so if you think of like that seasonality, you go through life evolutions. And it's like usually every 7 to 8 years, you've changed kind of your priorities, your focus. And that's okay too, to go through different chapters in life in that direction.
Do you think spiritual growth is tied to financial growth? Or does it depend on the individual?
Depends on what you're focused on. So if you took spiritual growth and you take Jesus, I think the actual highest financial literacy of spirituality is actually the relinquishing of money. And so like the highest element of I need nothing, I give it all away and I just live.
Surrender.
And consider the lilies and the birds and how they just exist and they know they're going to be taken care of. So like to me, that's the highest frequency of literacy to money, which is the hardest place to get to. So if you read the Surrender Experience or, some of like those kind of concepts, it's like the Buddha, the Gandhi, you just take like the biggest spiritual leaders that you think of, they had nothing. So like to me, I'm like, I actually think it's that obsession with I must have and in order for me to achieve. And so too many people associate like as I grow spiritually, my bank account should follow. And I'm like, no, your attachment to your bank account should actually decrease. Hopefully it does, but if it doesn't, you're like, that's okay. It's how it's supposed to be, and you surrender more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think the higher you grow spiritually, the less you actually care.
Yeah. I think it was Naval Ravikant that said this on a podcast, but he said, not wanting something truly is just as good as having it. Not wanting that car truly deeply, not because you don't believe you can get it, but truly removing the attachment from that materialistic is just as good as having it.
Yeah. I think it's a bigger thing to achieve. I think that's a higher level of spirituality. Because like I don't need to try to look good or be right or have the thing. To me, it was like the highest level of income spirituality would be like have a private jet that no one knows about. Like to me, like that is when you're like, I hope nobody finds out I have a private jet. Because then it's not the private jet to show somebody on Instagram I have a freaking private jet. To me, that's ego. Does that make sense?
Stealth wealth.
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit about your ayahuasca experience. So I in February, I went to Costa Rica for a retreat. It was a ceremony. It was a brotherhood retreat, not door-to-door related, but personal growth, a bunch of different entrepreneurs. My buddy James Silvas puts it on. and it was a psilocybin ceremony, so not ayahuasca, and it was very powerful. Obviously, I came back very pure, no phone for 7 days, no tech, no caffeine, no alcohol, like completely going in there pure. And so many takeaways happened to the point where now I'm hooked on these different ceremonies where it's like every year, just like before I'd get excited to go to like a music festival. Now it's like I want to go to these type of events where I almost disconnect to reconnect.
Yeah.
He also does an ayahuasca one. So I'm curious from a entrepreneur and someone that obviously operates at a high level and serves a lot of people, your experience.
Yeah, good question. So I have to be careful. So like disclaimer on this, because I could never like recommend, hey, you should do this. I would never say that. Because I think the problem is so many people are thinking, oh, I can go and have this experience by this thing saving me, which then becomes attached to a medicine. It's a medicine. It's like if you were to take Tylenol every day, and it's like, it's not Tylenol. It's like Tylenol is used to solve this one thing, and hopefully you never only have to take it like 2 of them a day, one time. You know what I mean? And your goal is not to keep going back to Tylenol. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I think if you don't have an intention to use the medicine, and or you get attached to the free neurological lunch that it's giving you, then you become, again, it's like that's the trap. But it could be used to unlock, different blocks or traumas or experiences. And so ayahuasca as a medicine, went to Peru, had a pretty deep intention. It felt really called to me, and just stars all aligned. We hosted probably 20 people down there. We booked out right on the Amazon with the Shipibo tribe, like meant how it's supposed to be done. Like we were sitting with grandmother that had been 50 years in it, grew up as that, right? Where I think a lot of people that go to some, basement in Denver and they're like, yeah, I did. I'm like,
Container's important.
yeah, it's taken this out of context and commercialized, which I think is not how it's meant to be, if that makes sense. So first I have to put that disclaimer. Number 2, every spiritual experience is very personal, right? So it's kind of like, don't throw your pearls amongst the swine kind of thing. So it's like, it's hard to talk super deeply about it, because it's like, that was my experience. And if I tried to tell you how your experience is going to be through my experience, then it's like, we're defeating the whole purpose of your connection and revelation to God. So what a psilocybin trip or a medicine journey or whatever you want to call it could do is really just untaps like this veil that maybe you've been blocking the fact that there is a higher power, and there is an element of you maybe forget to talk there on a consistent, and there is a bigger collective interconnection of all things, and there is a twine spirit that runs amongst, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh shit, like I am such a little ant on this massive freaking universe. Like I am like nothing, but I am so powerful in all of itself. You know what I mean? And you just start to deconstruct like time. You start to deconstruct, the interconnected of all things. And you start to humble out and be like, damn it, I am not the center of the universe. You know what I mean? You're just like, okay. And I think the biggest downloads, like doing things like that, have just been able to, where your conscious mind can only think to go, you tap into more of a parasympathetic, unconscious mind that then takes you down a journey that you're like, oh, okay, like there is more to this. So I think that'd be like the easiest way to explain it.
No, it's great, dude, and it's admirable for sure. The reason I bring this stuff up is because stuff like this really interests me, because it makes a massive impact on my life. And to kind of bring it back to earth for the sales leaders and the entrepreneurs and the people listening, it's doing things like this. And it doesn't need to be go to the Amazon jungle or go to Costa Rica, but really investing into yourself is really the theme of the last couple minutes.
Like, I think part of that 30-day dieta and the 7 days no phone, like you said, disconnect to reconnect. I do it every quarter. I sit on a rock for 12 hours. No phone, no food, fast for 24 hours, nobody else, me and a journal. Every quarter. And people are like, why do you do that? I'm like, because I disconnect to reconnect. And it doesn't need medicine or, you're not doing it to go get high. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, I just sit. And you'd be shocked after 2, 3, 4 hours of you just kind of like, all right, I'm still here. All of a sudden downloads and revelations and prayers just takes a whole nother meaning. But nobody ever takes time to do that. And we're wondering, like, why are things not happening for me? And why is my life suck? You're like, because you never actually think about your life. You're just doing life. You know what I mean? So like that intentionality to take 7 days without a phone was more than probably just the medicine. It actually was what created the container for the medicine to actually do the thing.
100%.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You go do that at a festival, you're like, dude, it's just super overstimulated. You're not connecting to shit. You're just like stuck in all their shit. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
that's what they think is the awakening. I'm like, no, you're just like attaching yourself to everybody else's energy. That's like scary.
It's interesting because I think over the last 10, 15 years, it feels like science and quantum physics and frequencies and energy, like all this scientifical facts are now starting to kind of reinforce a lot of the Eastern philosophies of, you know, whether it's yoga or meditation or stillness. And, you know, for you guys listening, you don't have to go sit on a rock for 12 hours. If you can do that, great. But just disconnecting during the day, like having boundaries for yourself, because the impact of that, doing that consistently, it's going to make you a more present leader. It's going to allow you to serve at a higher level. The next time a homeowner no shows you, you're going to be a lot more poised and have a lot more equanimity instead of just going into your survival frustration state. And I think that's really where it's all about. Sam, for you, when it comes to kind of bringing it back to door, how much of success do you think is skill set, actually knowing the job at a high level, how to pitch, how to handle objections, product knowledge, prospecting, recruiting, versus mindset in terms of your ideas, your thoughts, the frequency, your posture? What do you think that ratio is?
I mean, Brian Tracy says it's 80-20, right? 80% mental, 20% skill. And I probably taught that my whole career. As of recent, though, probably the last like 5 months, and there was like a few things that happened that I was like, okay, there are just a lot of people that have no skill. Like, it's so sad. And we all say it's mental, and you got to believe it and achieve it, and you got to go out there with confidence. And then I'm like, yes, but there are so many people that suck at talking to people. And I listen to them pitch, and I'm like, wow, no wonder you can't ever sell. Like, you have all the, like, you lose confidence so fast when your skill sucks, because the feedback that customers are going to give you is like, what are you saying? I don't want it. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, and you don't have the tools. So I don't know what the percentage is, but like recently I've been like really paying attention to that. And when I say this, I've had data on this stuff, like more than probably most salespeople on the planet, because we have an online academy with thousands of users and track the data. We have Knocking app. We have, you know, a lot of customers. Like, so I see this on a very intimate level, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have just said but then I go back and I'm like, my first day in alarms, I sold 5, which was all a mental, like, well, if I could sell curbs, like, why couldn't I sell alarms? Like, it was just kind of this cocky, like, I got it. And
Ignorance on fire.
Yeah. Like, and then I was like, oh, cool. And then I got my ass handed to me. Like, but it was like this dumb luck. No, it was just dumb misperception of like what I thought I could do. Does that make sense? So there's a balance. And I think too many people actually rely so much on them 80% mental, trying to kid themselves and shadow or like mask the fact that they're not willing to have the discipline to train. Does that make sense? And when I say discipline to train, there's so many people that go to the correlation meeting. That's not training. You showed up. Does that make sense? Like,
checking boxes.
You're checking boxes. You attended and you sat there. There are people that come to DoorCon and they attended and they checked a box. But I'm like, okay, what are the 3 things that you implemented, practice for the next 90 days? And you like were very deliberate on, and you showed improvement. And like when I talk about objection handle, like your note-taking ability, your ability to sit there and one-liner. And I learned like 15 one-liners at this workshop today that I was like, they went into a sales training and I was like, that's fire. I literally voice recorded it. I've already sent it to my AI, scripted, summarized. I've already started to make a whole new playbook for my sales team in the matter of like 2 hours ago. You know what I mean? That's like one of my action items. So I was like, how am I digesting this, training on it, then training others on it? And too many people they just want to, they're afraid to actually do that. Does that make sense? And I think the separation between good and great is not just mindset, it's training.
What do you think is the most valuable skill set in direct sales? And I know it may differ based on the role, right? Obviously, if you're a brand new setter, it's going to be door to door. If you're a brand new manager, maybe leadership, but like all encompassing to really squeeze all the juice out of the lemon. What do you think is the most valuable skill that someone should learn?
Integrity. And I'm going to say it in twofold. Integrity means do what you say. You know what I mean? I'm in alignment. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I don't lie. I treat others like how I want to be treated. It kind of encompasses honesty. It encompasses, but it also encompasses like this table has good integrity. It's like if I pushed it, the legs don't fall off, right? So I think what happens is if something's out of integrity, like this table, the second a windstorm blows, which door-to-door is going to have effing windstorms, then your legs fall out from under you and you just scramble, you switch companies, you run, you cry, you do whatever, right? So I think somebody that has strong resilience with integrity, like they're well built, where they know that resilient storms are going to hit them and can maintain integrity. When they say a goal of 5 and they say in blood, I'm going to sell 5 today. Does that make sense? And they tell somebody, hey, I'll call you back. And they call the customer back. And when they tell a rep, hey, I'm going to meet you here at 5 to pick you up, and they go up at 5 and they pick them up, they do what they say they're going to do, which I think is one of the biggest lacking things in our industry. And that's one of our values of like bring honor and integrity to door, because I thought it was one of the missing skills. And people think it's a value, but I'm like, no, it's a skill to say, when I say I'm going to do something, like I don't say a goal of 30 and don't like actually have intention to do that. And I watch too many people in this industry. They're like, I'm going to get 4 today. I'm like, how about just say 1 and do 1?
Yeah.
Stop being a liar to yourself. You just lie. How about just start living in integrity and do your shit? Does that make sense?
Is that teachable? Or is that
I think
intrinsic?
it's you teach yourself that. And then you have others hold you accountable to it. And it's so sad that so many people in this industry struggle actually coaching and managing salespeople because they're afraid if I actually held them accountable like I should hold them accountable, they'll actually be like, well, peace, this other manager at some other company is not going to hold me, like not be such a dick. And I'm like, how about I want you to be a dick and like call me out when I'm not in integrity? How about reps actually have that conversation with their manager instead of being like, why are you being so annoying and micromanaging me? Why do you like babysit me? I'm like, I don't know, maybe because you can't babysit your effing self. You should be begging your coach and manager and owner. Like the fact that, like, I love what I do now because people pay me to do that for them. Sales reps don't have to pay their manager to do that for them.
Or paid to be in the industry in most cases.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. I had the solar guy. He's like, I charge $250,000 to start a solar company under us as a franchise. Like, you know, you can go to EPC and do that for free, right? Like, they're begging people to start one, right? And he's like, I know. But when they pay $250,000 to start, guess what I have? Skin in the game. Commitment. And I was like, damn, that's smart. So, like, I think too many people in this industry don't know how to say a goal, live with integrity, and then they're afraid when a manager tries to hold them to that because the manager's living with fear because the tail a lot of time wags the dog.
Let's talk about brand a little bit. You went from obviously being the best sales guy to then regional to then VP of sales on the corporate side, and now have completely transitioned to having the biggest brand in door-to-door. When did you have that aha moment that branding was something important as you started to pivot away from more the direct side to the owner side?
Great question. I actually know exactly when it was. I hated social media. Trust me, I am not the guy that's like, yes, I just want to pull up my phone. Like, I'm way more of an introvert than I am an extrovert. And a lot of people don't think that. I'm sitting at a conference called IMG. It's a roofing convention. It was the first year I did door-to-door con. So literally within January, I went to 2 roofing conventions and held door-to-door con. And I never even knew roofing was an industry, right? This is 2018. And Gary Vee's speaking. And Gary Vee, somebody asked him in the roofing, they're like, what do you think of door-to-door? And he's like, you're an idiot. And I was like, damn it. Like, these are all roofers that know. You know, he just goes off on door-to-door. Like, he's like, that's the stupidest thing I have. He's like, I don't even own a computer. I have my phone. And he's just like, talks about social media, branding, podcast. He's like, tomorrow I'd start a podcast. I'd freaking be posting every effing day on roofs. And like, this is like 2018.
Yeah.
So like, nobody had posted a video. Like, now you see all these social medias of door knocking videos and whatever, right? I was the only guy posting, and I got shit so much. You can't post customers on camera on YouTube. You can't post on Instagram that. Like, I was getting legal people calling me, and I was like, F it. I like pioneered this whole like post your shit on Instagram and social. Now it's like pretty common. But like, that's because Gary Vee's sitting like looking me in the face. Like, I swear he's like calling me out personally. And he's like, get over your effing ego. Because like, what's on the other side of the people that need the help that you post something for free and you help them? And he's like, a personal brand will be very valuable that you could never take away. And I was like, touche.
All
So
right.
then, yeah, like I was like, I guess this Gary Vee guy's got some shit to say. So then I just kind of took it upon myself. I was like, all right, I'm gonna start posting videos and shit and start, you know what I mean? And that's kind of when I started taking it serious.
Where'd the idea for Door to Door Cop come from? Like, how did that whole thing create inception?
So I was in a mastermind. You know, it's funny because even Vivint, they're like, why are you paying 30 grand to be in a mastermind? I was like 24 and they're like, you just paid 30 grand? And I'm like, yeah. And then people ask, like, how are you so successful? I'm like, I don't know. I was willing to pay my own money instead of be like, manager, owner, will you pay for my ticket? You know what I mean? Like, it's so sad. I mean, people like won't even pay $300 to go to Door to Door Con. And one of the retreats was sit on a rock. And this is where I got the whole concept. They had us go to the desert and they did a 3-day silence fast, sit on a rock. And I was like, this sounds dope. So day 2, I'm just sitting there and all of a sudden I have a vision and it's like hallucinating. Like I was like, oh shit. And God's like, you need to do this event. And I was like, no. And it just didn't leave me. And he's like, throw this event. I was like, what do I call it? He's like, doesn't matter. Throw this event. I was like, all right. And it was one of those like kept knocking on your door and God just like, do this. And I was like, I can't ignore this. And then I just launched it.
Wow. How much of ideas or paradigm shifts or aha moment do you feel like comes from consuming information, the content, the books, the seminars, the door-to-door cons of the world versus stillness, disconnect to reconnect? Do you feel like that information is already within you?
I think there's a formula. So think of like mind, body, spirit, right? So we are all the combination of all the three, but it's like you don't say I am body. You say I have a body. So, but the problem is like without your body, it's hard to conceptualize things. If we're just floating spirits around and it's just like, what is that, right? So think of the body as like your experience is doing, right? Then the mind is like the education side of this. And if you don't like take every clue, every lesson, every mentor, every book, every situation, the consumption of learning, and you just get to say then what's the application, but then the soul, the spirit is where things download. And it's like if we take God out of the equation, it's like he's your best advocate. Why would you remove the all-seeing, all-knowing, timeless bound human like constraint out of this? You know what I mean? Like why are we removing this?
Yeah.
So it's like you kind of need all three, your own personal experience and application of your history or whatever. And then the education side, like why am I paying $5 grand for a 2-day seminar? Like I paid $25 grand for a 2-day seminar. Like, and people bitch about a $400 ticket. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, how about this? Who has what I know need, and how do I go direct to source, shortcut my shit, and then try to apply it to exactly what I want to do? You know what I mean?
Another deep question for you on that same topic, because I kind of like where the conversation is. How much of the value do you think you get from investing in yourself when it comes to these events or really anything in the actual content you receive versus the art or the act of you being a person that invests this $5,000 in for 2 days?
I think it's more I knew that my subconscious, what's so funny is I met 2 people in there that were like, help me. So my whole intention is like, can I get my ROI before I even leave? And I think I sold both of them $2,500 boot camp tickets.
Nice.
It's like I made my $5 grand back, I think. I mean, I got to go collect, but we'll see. Because I'm like, my subconscious is like, I need to get my money back. But if I don't pay any money, then there's no skin in this. So I think there's the element of like, am I a consumer or am I an investor? And those are 2 very different people. There's free people on YouTube that are like, I'm consuming, I'm a video watcher, I love sports and I watch them. And I'm like, I don't watch football. Yeah. I play football. I play basketball. I go play golf. I don't sit on the TV and watch golf all the time. I would rather go play it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm an investor. So it's like, how do I go pay the green fee, play golf, and experience it? And so for me, there's so many people who watch this podcast, they watch YouTube, they see us online or whatever. And I'm like, the power is experiencing it, investing it, because then you've got a super ROI because no one can take away your learning. And whether you learned nothing, whether you met somebody, because what's crazy is that mastermind, I met a guy that I invested in. I met another guy that invested in me. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like the network. I just met 2 people. It could be my clients. I wasn't expecting that. You know what I mean? So it's like, you never know. Is it one relationship away for the next breakthrough? Is it one idea away from the next breakthrough. But if I'm not putting myself in the room, then I'm just like a spectator
on the sideline.
Cool, like fat Broncos fan that's drinking his beer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
the grown man's jersey on his back.
Exactly. I'm like, you are a wannabe.
Okay, I got 4 tactical questions for you, all which I believe are the 4 kind of tenets of door-to-door: sales, recruiting, leadership, and self-accountability.
Those are our pillars of our business. Well, 3 of the 4, but that's what we built our business on.
I almost got them. Yeah. What would you say is your best sales nugget, sales negotiation, communication, or piece of advice that you've heard?
What's the best sales process? Somebody asked me that. I was like, I got 5 steps to door approach, or the 10-step sales process, or this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he's like, nope, the customer's buying process. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And I think too often at the beginning of our pre-frame, we don't sit down and say, hey, in order for me to like get to a yes or a no, I'm okay with either. What needs to happen for you to say yes? Just curious. I'm not saying you are. Well, and it's like, great, let's just hit on all those effing steps. And then we say yes. Like, why are we so afraid to uncover the customer's buying process instead of going with some like, and it could be your presentation, but if you uncover like, how do they buy? Because you think of a customer, they buy off of, emotion, or they buy logically, and they're anywhere in between, right? So it's like you have those owls or you have the tiger, right? And so if I can say, okay, I'm okay closing owls because I know their buying process, and I'm okay selling to the buying process of them. Does that make sense? Instead of being like, damn, this stupid Indian that I can't sell, or this Jew, you know what I mean, they never buy shit. Yeah. You're like, no, Jews buy a lot of things. Yeah. You just got to understand their freaking buying process.
Yeah, they just want to deal on it.
Exactly. So it's like, what is your buying process? Okay, let's go. Let's go to war. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
Best piece of advice, nugget, or tactical piece for recruiting?
It's a tenacity game and an attraction game. You're never going to recruit higher talent than you're willing mentally to recruit. Does that make sense? That guy would never work for me. I don't know if I pulled $100,000 salary guy from his job. Like, I don't even know if you know what I mean? It's this insecurity game. And then the tenacity game is the money's in the follow-up. The money's in the, I check in. Like, I just texted a guy. I was like, are you recruitable? Literally, I just asked him that straight up. I haven't read the text yet, what he said. He just texted me back. And he's like, but I just, guess what? This is my first approach. And guess who I'm going to text in 3 months? Are you recruitable? And 3 more months. Are you recruitable? And he's like, dude, shut up. And I'm going to text you until there's a moment in time that you're going to be like pissed off at your job and you're going to come work with me. That's tenacious. But he already turned me down 4 times probably. But I'm going to get my best recruits by being follow-up tenacious, because that's how I want that guy. Does that make sense?
Recruiting and sales are very similar.
Very similar.
Most people think they're good door-to-door salesmen, but they're bad recruiters. It's really the same thing. You just have to shift your mindset a little bit.
It's like, am I going after high quantity funnel and I'm whittling down, which would be like an Indeed lever to push, get 1,000 applicants, you spend money. It's pretty simple. Or am I going off of high value, homes? Am I in the richest neighborhoods trying to get big deals, and I'm sniping these big deals and selling less, versus I'm going to the hood and I'm just selling a lot of volume and they're smaller systems. You know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing.
Best piece of advice on leadership?
There's so many. And leadership is probably one of my strongest but weakest points, if that makes sense. Because I think leadership, like somebody's like, damn, Sam, you're such a good leader. Like, how do you do it? And I'm like, what books did you read? I'm like, 20 years of leading. It's like
doing it.
I don't know if there's a book that taught you the move when the girlfriend was cheating on her husband. They come to you. You know what I mean? You're just like, I feel like So my whole thing is like, what is a leader? And to me, managing and leading, like distinguishing the difference of, am I playing manager or am I playing leader? And I think too many people cross those two paths. And a leader, in my opinion, is leading through example. It's through coaching up. It's through actual influence and change. And I watch too many people have a manager title and they do the managing way too much, or they don't do the managing enough. and they have a leader title and they don't know how to manage because they're just really good sales leaders, which means you're the rabbit, you're the pace setter, you're leading from the front. That's leading. But the problem is they don't manage. They don't do the one-on-ones. They don't do the pitch reviews. They don't do the accountability. They don't know how to do the coaching conversation. They don't do the feedback loops. They don't, you know what I mean? Like the data management needs to do. And so I think it's just understanding, are you a leader that struggles at managing? Are you a manager that struggles at leading? Or do you know how to jump back and forth between the both?
It's good. Self-accountability, which I guess ties into leadership. But if you would ask me what the biggest detriment for most 1099 self-employed, eat what you kill type of people is, it's they just can't get out of their own way.
Most people aren't built to be their own boss. You have a 1099 title, but work like a W-2. Does that make sense? Like
conditioning their whole life.
You should be at W-2, but you're in a 1099 job. So what if you just said, okay, manager, you're okay to treat me like a W-2? Put me on a freaking performance review. Put me on a PIP. Put me on a 2-week, you know what I mean? Like, even though you're not paying me W-2, because if you were W-2, would you show up late to the meeting?
Nope.
Would you cut out early? Hey, dude, I'm just going to like dip. No, you can't just like come and go when you want. You can't just like work how you feel, that's where the 1099 comes in. So I'm like, how about this? You weren't built to be a 1099. You're actually built to have a boss. So just humble out and say you get paid as a 1099, but treat your job like a W-2. Meaning you work the hours, you show up when you're supposed to show up, and you leave not before you're supposed to leave. And if you were just humble enough to say, okay, boss, because I came to the conclusion, I was okay not being the car driver. And I had the self-discipline to say, I'm not feeling it this week. You drive. Here's my keys. Drop me off. Does that make sense? Like, I knew there were weeks where it was like, I'm going to be tempted to get in the air conditioning car and just chill for a minute. You know what I mean? And I'm human. So it's like, have that accountability of like, I know that I start here and I stop here no matter what. And the problem is that we get in the mindset of 1 and done, baby, 2 and done, baby. I've already done 5 this month. Might as well take a week off. And it's like, that's not how life works, dude. Why don't you do 20 this month? You're on a roll. Instead of self-sabotage your entire opportunity for success and momentum, you idiot. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's good, dude. Sam, this has been great, dude. I appreciate you being on. My last question for you. If you could go back in time, we're talking 18-year-old rookie Vivint Sam, the Sam today, what advice would that Sam today give the 18-year-old advice to accelerate his joy, fulfillment, happiness, and success?
Ooh, it's definition of success. You know, the 18-year-old version of Sam's definition of success was probably very different than 35-year-old definition. You know what I mean? So it's like, I just say good luck. The hard part is it's like we play these time warp games, and you're like, had I told 18-year-old version of Sam something different, it would have changed like the path. And I think probably like don't get married so effing young. That would have been one of them. It's like you turd, like date for a minute. I think that would have been one. Number 2 would have been, but I don't regret any of that. Number 2, I think of how many like family reunions I missed, Lake Powell trips you miss, like the summer model that I ran. I didn't have a summer for 9 years. You know what I mean? So it was just like, and is that bad? No, I had 8 months of winter. And so it's like, what if I changed that? No, I don't know. It's like, it needs that gestational period. Like, think about this. Most people need the young 20s as a gestational period, military mission, sales career for 4 freaking summers, hard. Because if you try to jump frog or leapfrog that, and if I were to take that away from 18-year-old Sam, I would be robbing him of the resilience training ground, the sales training ground, the repetition ground that made me who I am today. And I think too many people try to shortcut that 10 years. I interviewed Ed Milet on my podcast. And he goes, what people see is the half a billionaire I am today. What they don't see is the 10 years of door-to-door I did in insurance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I'm like, you wouldn't be where you are today had you not knocked doors for 10 years. This is Ed Milet. Does that make sense? But it's like people want to jump and due to social media, due to like, like my 8-year-old, he's like, I'm gonna be YouTube famous. I'm like, bro, get that out of your effing head. Could it happen? Could you be an overnight video popped off? But I'm like, you won't sustain that just because one of your videos went viral. Maybe you make some money from it. You don't know how to recreate. It takes Mr. Beast, like science behind science to make money on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like it is a science. I just met a guy that made $4 million on YouTube views, and he has 20 Vietnam employees. He does like 15 pre-strategy sessions for every video. You know what I mean? Like
serious operation.
Serious operation, bro. You don't just like, I'm a YouTuber. And I think that's what people don't realize is it's like, you don't be successful from some shortcut. And so like anybody that thinks like life is going to be so much easier because XYZ, I'm like, I hate to break it to you. There's just like a bunch of golden BBs, no silver bullet. Just accept the freaking multiple golden BBs you shoot every effing day.
Everyone's jealous of your life, but no one's jealous of how you got there.
Yeah, it's like, you didn't see the decade of freaking, like, yeah, they're like, Sam, look at you, live a great life. I'm like, yeah, I have probably knocked way more doors than most of you guys. So
you were with me meditating on that rock, dog.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, bro, 18, do the math. 2008 was my first summer. You know what I mean? Decade.
No, I love it, dude. Where can people get connected with you? Get connected with door-to-door experts. Maybe they want some consulting. Where can people find you?
The Sam Taggart on Instagram or DDD Experts. YouTube on DDD Experts. I mean, you can Google it, but like, I think Instagram is probably the fastest way to connect. But yeah, hit me up.
Love it, dude. Hey, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you.